Hello friends, and welcome to the special production of the University of North Carolina at Asheville. I'm Bill Massey, Vice Chancellor for Alumni and Development, and it's my pleasure to spend the next few minutes with you. Earlier this spring, at the 78th commencement exercises of the university, the trustees of the University of North Carolina at Asheville honored two distinguished North Carolinians with honorary doctoral degrees. Those North Carolinians are Doris Betts, respected author, acclaimed professor, noted mentor, and community activist, and Asheville native James Ferguson, a 1960 graduate of Stevens Lee High School and one of the world's most respected and acclaimed attorneys in the area of civil rights and human rights. An honorary doctoral degree is one of the ways in which a university community can celebrate the lifetime accomplishment of those whose work, whose lives, and whose careers exemplify the highest standards for which the university itself stands. In honoring Doris Betts and James Ferguson, the trustees of the University of North Carolina at Asheville, chaired by Janice Brummett, chose two people whose lives exemplify the very work that a liberal arts institution seeks to encourage and engender. Prior to the commencement exercises, at which Chancellor Ann Ponder and Board Chair Janice Brummett awarded the honorary degrees, the Board of Trustees hosted a dinner in their honor. At that dinner, it was my privilege to have a conversation with each of the honorands, and we are pleased to share some moments from that conversation with you. I hope that you will find their conversations as inspiring as we at the university found them to be. Thank you for joining us. Doris Betts, it's such a pleasure and an honor for us at UNC Asheville to be able to award you a distinguished and honorary doctorate degree tomorrow at commencement. We appreciate your being with us, and we so appreciate the influence and the impact that you have had on writers here in our area, throughout North Carolina and the South. I wanted to ask you about two areas of your writing that it seems to me are central to maybe who you are as well as what you write about. One is the South as a sense of place, and the other is the role of religion in your work. Will you share with us? Let's take sense of place first.
Well, of course, everyone says Southerners write about place because we still have a sense of home. And for us, place is still outdoors, involves nature and not just the big city, even if you happen to live in a city. And in North Carolina, we have all kinds of places, from the Blue Mountains down to the Atlantic Ocean. So I have a great love for the state. I think we still live in a beautiful place, despite the litter by the highways. The sense of religion, I think I grew up in a very staunch ARP tradition, which is a version of Presbyterianism. Mother always said it stood for the all right people. And it was a rather conservative, almost fundamentalist church, but it was Bible-centered. And the advantage of that for a writer is you got to read the most beautiful use of the English language that you had available to you. And you were in a denomination that sang only the Psalms, so you had praise and praise of beauty. And I thought of that writing up to Asheville today. I thought, I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. There are things like that that are in your head forever. So both of those things are very important to me, and I don't think about them anymore. They're like breathing. They're natural.
They are natural to you, and yet over your distinguished career, you have helped so many students, now authors, short stories, novels, plays, come to understand that same sense of the value of the word and the love of the word. As you look back on that so distinguished career, Doris, what is it that you see in students that tells you that someone is going to be a writer with a capital W. Are there any common traits that you see in your years of working with students?
Yes, I think there are common traits, even though there are in student writers as different as, let's say, Tim McLaurin and Randall Keenan, two of whom I'm very proud and who are quite different. They both loved the language, and they both went on writing. They wrote in good times and bad. They took criticism reasonably well, made use of it, and moved on. You couldn't have discouraged them if you had wanted to. So it's sort of a pleasure to encourage them. And they had something distinctive in the way they saw the world. For Tim, it was blue-collar Fayetteville. For Randall, it was eastern North Carolina, growing up black in a small town. Very different views of North Carolina, both of them very true, with a story to tell the rest of us. So part of what you look for is just the willingness to do it. I think many people have talent. Not many have the combination of talent and sticking to it when times get hard and when you're rejected, which they nearly all will be, and going ahead with it.
Well, certainly with both that you mentioned, Tim and Randall, if we are watchers of North Carolina Book Watch with D.G. Martin on public television, we get to enjoy that success and a little bit of insight into their worlds. And you help to shape that, or to...
Or to stand out of their light. You don't so much teach people anything, I think, except you can teach technique, you can teach how to cut down prose, or how to seek the best word, or you can say this page is better than this page, and then let them figure out how or why. But you don't change them very much. You don't want to. If you change them very much, they would then be too flexible, and they wouldn't be able to withstand the world. It's very much like being a parent. You can only teach pretty much by example, and then by letting them take some licks on their own.
So you did help to influence them, or to, you allowed them to bring forward that which was already in them, even though they may not have known it. What are the things that you look back to that help to shape your approach to writing, or the way you enjoy putting words together, or the themes that you enjoy and have so successfully explored through your work, both short stories and novels?
One of the things I thought about coming up to Asheville today was, of course, Thomas Wolfe, whom I discovered as a teenager, which is the right time to discover Wolfe. And not long ago, I was talking with Louis Rubin, and I said, well, you know, I have trouble reading Wolfe now because I've become somebody who prunes everything down. And he says, Doris, wasn't he very important to you at one time? And I said, yes. And he said, well, you mustn't disavow that any more than you would disavow the person you were at age 18. And I think what I saw in Wolfe was, one, a North Carolinian from anywhere could love the language, and he played with it so exuberantly. And that it would be possible to learn to be a writer even if you weren't from Stratford-on-Avon, you know, or even if you weren't one of the great Russians, that you could come, you could be a Tar Heel, and there were stories worth telling. So I did think about Wolfe today. This is his turf, after all.
When did you know that you were a teacher?
I'm not sure that I knew I was a teacher until I actually began doing it, and I did a foolish thing. I was teaching writing, and I learned a great deal from watching Max Steele, who is one of the master teachers. But I had very gifted students who didn't know plurals from singulars, and who didn't know, they couldn't find how to make the verb and the noun go together. And I stomped into the freshman English office one day and I said, what are you teaching these children? They said, come on in. And so I began teaching freshman comp and everything else. And I learned a great deal about teaching by doing the trench work of helping students write who are not going to become writers. But students themselves teach you how to teach them. They respond well if you're doing a good job, and they're mean as snakes if you're not, and that's what they ought to be. You ought to have a good communication, especially in a writing class. I love teaching. I miss it a great deal since I've retired.
Our wonderful new chancellor, Ann Ponder, had all three of her degrees from UNC Chapel Hill, and they were earned at a time when you were on the faculty there. Did you ever encounter
I knew Ann
Ann?
at that time. She was while I was the director of freshman comp, I had such bad luck that they kept promoting me. And she was then a teaching assistant and working on her doctorate. And I knew the man who became her husband, who was a colleague in the English department. I can see her still. She was also a very beautiful young woman. I'm sure, I haven't seen her for some years. I'm sure she still is. Very talented. And she could have made her life, I think, in scholarly American literature. But she chose the route of really being an academic administrator and has had remarkable success. And I was just delighted to hear that she was back here because this is her home territory. She grew up in this area, and for her this is a homecoming. And it seemed to me a perfect match of the right person for the right school at the right time.
One of the things that Ann has so clearly reaffirmed at UNC Asheville is the significance and importance of the liberal arts in a world that tends to sometimes over-specialize and over-analyze itself. I think you probably would share a passion for the liberal arts as a guide to life or as a preparation for a purposeful life. Am I correct in that, or?
Absolutely, but you know, it has become very difficult, I think, to persuade certain elements in our population that the liberal arts, that the humanities have innate merit. They're not always geared to the paycheck you are going to earn. They're geared not to making a living so much as making a life and deepening that life so that you have more things that you associate with. I remember I had a high school English teacher who would say things like, "You're learning this because you're furnishing your mind." And I thought, what a dreadful idea, because she was quite right. There are people who are 70 years old and have nothing up there to think about or with. So yes, I do think it's wonderful, and I hope that excellence in liberal arts will continue. That's the great strength of Asheville, I think.
Doris, it occurs to me that your life was preparation for your career. With joy and with a smile, look back on early jobs that you had in a music store, as a part-time pianist, typing for the Red Cross, working in a clothing store, all of which are experiences that layer upon each other and then become the tablet on which perhaps you as a writer write. Talk about the value of experience. I think one of the important understandings of the value of a college education, university education today, is that it is a time of questioning, and it needs to be a time of questioning. It's also a time of looking at experiences beyond what you have heretofore had and kind of anticipating what the future might bring to it. How do you see, either consciously or unconsciously, childhood and early adolescent and early adult experiences layering on to make you the very successful, prominent writer, but also the eminently distinguished teacher for which you have been so acclaimed?
I think it was Willa Cather who said, in childhood, you really had all the experiences you were going to need as a writer. You really had learned all about the major emotions. You had felt them all. Everything else then became a difference in degree and kind. I noticed with students in college, for instance, if they write about characters, those characters don't have jobs. That's because they are thinking like students. Whereas having grown up as I did, having many jobs, by the time I was in college, I felt that I had had a lot of adult preparation with buying and spending and saving money. But I came out of a time and out of a family that had survived the Depression. It was a very different world. And I'm very grateful for all of those peculiar jobs that I had and for what they taught me. It's one reason it's a pleasure to teach writing to adults who have a different kind of experience to bring, who have not only had their childhood, but they have now buried people whom they loved, which is not true when you're 18 very often. So there are many other experiences that color you and change you. I think I've learned a great deal from every job I ever had, and I was pretty good at most of them. I took them quite seriously. I went to work very young because you had to have a work permit, and they didn't ask for your birth certificate, so you simply added a few years and went on to work. And I worked every summer. I worked my way through college, and thought that was a marvelous experience as well. And I never thought that I would be at home, you know, doing the dishes and sweeping the floors only. And since I've retired, that is what I'm doing, and I was right the first time. It's hard work and not nearly so rewarding.
And you are a product you have received from and given to this wonderful state university system that we have in North Carolina, attending what is now UNC Greensboro and Chapel Hill, and I believe you have honorary degrees from Pembroke, and now from UNC Asheville, and I may have left some out there. As you look back on a lifetime of learning through the university, but also a career with the university, how do we stack up? How is this University of North Carolina?
It's not only wonderful in itself, but it has molded this state in ways that have made us not just in the Bible Belt or a buckle on the Bible Belt, but made us a progressive southern state. One of the people I have most admired, and he's a hero of mine, is Bill Friday, who not only loved this state and loved the importance of taking education to everybody, letting everybody come in and learn, but who was a superb politician as well, and who has used that skill to increase educational opportunities across the state. I don't think there are many states that have 16 institutions of this merit, all of them growing, all of them with similar but rather different emphases in their missions. It gives you a chance to see the whole state in a way that I would not have been able to see it if I had just been a novelist sitting at home. I have thought to be a part of the university system itself was a great reward. And I also think of all those people that this weekend are out there watching their spiritual children graduate and go out in the world. We have quite remarkable faculty members and administrators. And every year, I think the pride they feel is hard to describe, but genuine and very important.
Doris, you have been honored as a teacher. You're a recipient of the Tanner Award at Chapel Hill, which I want you to explain.
Yes.
And we are delighted and honored that a member of the Tanner family is a member of our Board of Trustees here at UNC Asheville. You also have a full professorship at UNC Chapel Hill named in your honor. And I know that a longtime friend of UNC Chapel Hill and really of every university in the system, Ben Jones, was a spearhead behind that.
Was.
Tell me, how does it feel to have a professorship named after you?
I never thought that would happen, and it was these things that come along in your life sometimes seem like surprises or acts of grace. During our literary festival, I was speaking before a large group, and unknown to me, Ben Jones, whom I didn't know from a hole in the ground, was sitting on the front row, and we had question and answers, and he liked that. He liked the fact that it felt like being in a classroom, even though we had 200 or 300 people there. And that got him interested in doing something for a professorship. And when he mentioned it to me, I thought, well, that would be very nice. I thought it would be very nice for him to write a small check to creative writing. And instead, he spearheaded the drive to name this professorship, which Pam Durban now holds and which she is doing a wonderful job with. Ben has been, who lives part of the year in Hendersonville, I know, and part in Florida. But he has been a great friend to education, again, all over the state, not just to Chapel Hill, although that's his alma mater, and he loves that especially.
He visits us here in Asheville
sure
on
he
occasion.
does.
And it's always a pleasure to see him walking in the library because he usually
Usually he brings some little gift. There's a book
absolutely.
he brings you, or a bookmarks, or that you would like you to have. And he's just, he's a wonderful man. He's just recently done some marvelous things for the School of Music. I mean, his interests are wide-ranging, but he has had a special interest in libraries and in English departments. Fine man.
Well, Doris Betts, distinguished professor, writer, author, citizen of our state, horsewoman.
And you have on the tie with the horses on it. I'm glad to see
In
that.
your honor, completely. Thank you so much for honoring us at UNC Asheville. It is a pleasure to present you tomorrow to the newest graduates of this university and to present them with a model of someone to whom they can look with such pride as a distinguished member of our community.
Well, I'll be proud to be one of UNC Asheville's color bearers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Doris Betts stands among the South's most accomplished writers, a native of Statesville and a Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Women's College of the University of North Carolina, now UNC Greensboro. Doris Betts wrote her first award-winning collection of short stories while a college student. The most recent of her 9 novels and short story collections are Souls Raised from the Dead and The Sharp Teeth of Love. She taught creative writing at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill for 35 years, achieving a legacy of excellence in teaching and shaping young writers, evidenced by a professorship and a teaching award in her name. Among her many recognitions are the North Carolina Award in Literature, an induction into the North Carolina Literary Hall of Fame, the annual Doris Betts Fiction Prize of the North Carolina Writers Network, and the Thomas Wolfe Society's Distinguished Service Award are also tributes to this extraordinary writer and teacher, whom we are pleased to recognize today with the Honorary Doctor of Humane Letters.
James Ferguson II. It is such an honor and pleasure for UNC Asheville in your hometown to award you the honorary degree at this year's commencement.
Thank you so much. It's just such an honor for me to be here in Asheville, my hometown, and to have such a great honor bestowed upon me by the university.
As currently a resident of Charlotte, we hope someday you'll return full-time to Asheville, but as a resident of Charlotte, coming back on occasions like this, you certainly have seen enormous change in our community, in Asheville and environments, since the time that you, as a young man, distinguish yourself as a visionary in the area of civil and human rights. What was it, you think, or what were some of the forces in your family, in your community, in your church, in your school, in your nature, that led you to such a distinguished and honored career?
Well, Bill, you know, I've thought about that 1,000 times, not exactly in those terms, but, you know, we all think about why do we do the things that we do in life. We think about why do others do the things that they do in life. And I don't think there's any single answer to that. We're all the product of the sum total of our experiences. We're the product of those we know. We're the product of those who love us and who give us attention. I do know, without any question at all, that one of the greatest influences in my life has been my parents, both my mother and my father. I was fortunate to grow up in a 2-parent home, but not just a 2-parent home, but a 7-child home, of which I was the 7th. And my mother and father, of little means themselves, dedicated themselves to see to it that my brothers and sisters and I was the youngest, had every educational opportunity there was. They understood the importance of education, if for no other reason that they had not had the opportunity themselves to fully develop themselves educationally. My father completed the 6th grade. My mother completed 1 year of college. But they, with very little, assured that all of us would attend college, and all of us did. They also, in their own quiet, unassuming way, instilled in us the notion that we could do whatever we wanted to do and be whatever we wanted to be, even at a time when all of the forces of society said, that's not true. You can't be whatever you want to be. You can be what society will let you be. And there are limits to that. And your limits are low for the obvious reasons of the racist society that we were living in at that time. So I want to first say that my parents were a powerful, powerful influence in my life. And they remain so even now, even though they're both deceased. I hear their voices all the time. And they're the quiet, still voices that you know are telling you the things you need to hear. So parents have been influential in my life. And they've influenced me as a parent because I wanted to pass on to my children the same lessons, the same philosophy that they passed on to me. Teachers, people in the community, you know, that saying that it takes a village played itself out every day right here in Asheville as I was growing up. I grew up with other children in a community, and everybody in that community had the welfare of children at heart. And they let that be known, and they wouldn't hesitate to let you know that you weren't just a child of your parents. You were a child of theirs, you were a child of the community, and that this community cared about you. So I'm ever grateful for that. And teachers who did far more than teach school lessons. They taught life lessons. They took a very, very strong and lasting interest in all of us. So I absorbed all of that, and I felt all of that. And at a point in time, I don't think that it was because of anything that was special about me, to be honest with you. At a point in time, it was time for me and my colleagues and others and those of us who knew that something was wrong with the way that society was structured. It was time for us to do something. I happened to be along at that time, and I happened to be vocal about it, as I've always been vocal about the things that I care about and believe in. So I spoke up, but it wasn't just me. It was several of us in high school in 1959 and 60 in Asheville at Stevens Lee High School, an all-black school, who knew that it was time for us to act. And we acted, and we had adults in the community who supported us, advised us, guided us, and aided us in all that we did. So it was just my time, Bill. I can't tell you that there was anything special about me, but I'm proud to have had the opportunity to meet a challenge and to have the place that I was born into and grew up in not only change me, but to have an opportunity to change that place. And I think that's a lot of what life is about, finding ways to change the place where we are, whether it's segregation you're dealing with, whether it's war, whether it's poverty, whether it's hunger, whether it's a need in society, whether it's intolerance, whether it's hatred. We all have an opportunity every day to change the place where we are, and it's just a question of whether we seize that opportunity.
What a beautiful tribute to your family and to the community. I'm interested in whether your parents were around to see you graduate from what is now North Carolina Central and later from Columbia Law School and celebrate that moment as a family.
I'm thankful every day that my parents got to see all of us through school. I was the last one coming along. And yes, they were there at North Carolina Central at what was one of my proudest moments, and I believe one of their proudest moments, to see their last child graduate from college. They knew the others were going to be all right. They had already done what they were going to do. And then again, when I went to law school, and I was the first in my family to go to law school. I had sisters who went to graduate school and did well in graduate school. But I was the first to actually go to law school. And my parents were right there by my side when I graduated from law school. And by that time, I was married. And my wife, I married Barbara Turman from Asheville. And she, of course, was there, and my parents were there, and her parents were there. So it was a wonderful occasion to have family there. My brothers and sisters were all there. So it was just a great family time at Columbia in New York, at a place which was foreign to me when I first went there, but a place which became home for 3 years. And my parents were there for that proud moment, and my parents were there when I went into law. And I went into law in '67, and they were around when I worked on the school desegregation case in Asheville and in Charlotte and all over North Carolina. And they were around to see some of the things come about that we worked for back in high school in 1960. So I'm delighted and proud that my parents were able to share a lot of my life. They were able to share my grandchildren. They were able to share my marriage. They were able to share my career. So I've just been fortunate beyond belief that my parents shared with me in a lot of the things that I've done. And they share even now. My mother died in '87, my father in '89. But the things that they imparted to me are there. And they share with me through my brothers and sisters. My brothers and sisters are very supportive of all of the things I do. My oldest sister, who, if you give her a chance, will tell you she helped raise me, is here with me this weekend, and that's a proud moment for all of us.
I know that every viewer who's hearing you speak now is struck by the passion with which your personal life is lived, and your professional life is a testimony to someone who has been a remarkable leader in the civil rights and human rights area for a lifetime, for your whole adulthood, beginning back in Asheville there at Stevens Lee High School. What would you say to students today, to young people, some of whom are graduating from UNC Asheville and other campuses of our state university and other universities, and students who are aspiring to that collegiate possibility in their future? What's the role of passion in life, in career?
If we have nothing to be passionate about, we have little to live for. I believe it's important for young people, especially, to find their passion. And no one can tell a young person where that passion is, but I believe that I can say that for every young person or every person who's born into this world, the passion is there, you have to find it. Now, it's not always easy to do that because the forces of society don't tell us to find our passion. Society tells us to do the things that society says we're supposed to do. Go to school at a certain age, graduate at a certain age, go to college, get a job, get married, raise children, find a comfortable house, find a comfortable car, whatever. And that's what life is all about. And while all of those things are important, they are not the stuff that life is made of. Life is made of our finding, our passion, and using that passion to make and leave the world a better place than we found it. And I think we all have that challenge, we have that obligation, but it's more than a challenge and an obligation. It's an opportunity. And I think we have to look at life as a series of opportunities. I think when we look at it that way, then we can begin to find the passion for what we do. And it's not going to be the same for everyone. Some people find that passion in music. Some find it in art. Some find it in athletics. Some find it in the causes that make us move forward as a society as a whole. Finding a way to reach out to those who've not had the same opportunity that we have had. To try to help them find that opportunity and to find a better life wherever they find themselves. There's a biblical saying that goes way back, the poor you always have with you. That's true, and we found that to be true throughout the ages. Ever since that statement was made, we've had the poor with us somewhere. They're all around us. They're here in this country. They're in Africa. They're in Asia. They're in South America. They're all over. And we who have had some fortune in life to be able to eke out some of the pleasures of life and some of the material things of life have a duty, and I hope a passion, to pass that on to someone else. Life is bigger than just ourselves, and life is bigger than just our families, and life is bigger than just our friends. Life is about all of the people who live it, and those of us who've had a bit more fortune than some others have the opportunity, we have the challenge, and we have the obligation to do something to make life better for everybody and not just ourselves and those who are around us. That's what the passion is all about. We can make it better in lots of different ways. We can make it better by drawing a picture. We can make it better by putting a basketball in the hoop. We can make it better by speaking. We can make it better by singing. There are just many, many ways we can make it better, but make it better. Find the passion, make life better, not just for yourselves, but for
James, you speak as a very wise man, and I think that as president of Ferguson Stein Chambers law firm, one of the most distinguished firms in our country, as a repeated member of the Inner Circle of Advocates, which is the 100 most distinguished members of the legal community in the country, one could understand if you became corporate in your thinking. But there seems to be a wonderful balance there that you have achieved. Who are your heroes?
Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi was one of my heroes. Gandhi gave a saying a while back that my daughter has sort of adopted as her mantra, and that is, we must be the change that we wish to see in the world. And Gandhi became that change that he wished to see in the world. Jesus did that, Moses did that, Buddha did that, Martin Luther King did that, Frederick Douglass did that, Cesar Chavez did that. And you know, the list goes on of people who found their passion, of people who became the change that they wished to see in the world. One of my personal heroes is a man I met in high school, right here in Asheville. His name was Will Rowland. Mr. Rowland was the chief advisor for the Asheville Student Committee on Racial Equality, ASCORE. And I saw in Mr. Rowland all of the characteristics of heroism. He, number one, saw a cause, and it was the cause that young people were involved in. He had enough confidence in himself and enough wisdom to know that he didn't need to tell us everything to do. He needed to empower us to do it, and he did that. And Mr. Rowland knew that it meant sacrifice to bring about change. He sacrificed a thriving jewelry business right in the heart of what was then Black Asheville, right on Market Street. He sacrificed that jewelry business for something much larger than that. He sacrificed it for his belief in the principle of equality. And he supported us to the detriment of his business, and he was actually proud to have been a part of the change that came about in Asheville. And he was a man who never called attention to himself, but a man who deserved all of the world's attention just because of the purity and the sincerity and the commitment of the qualities that welled up in him when he saw this opportunity to bring about change in Asheville. So we don't have to look to the annals of history for our heroes. They're all around us. And whenever I see people who are willing to make a commitment, willing to make a sacrifice, willing to give up something to help others who need it and to help society become a better place, that's a hero for me. All of my brothers and sisters are heroes because they are so supportive of each other, and I'm supportive of them in all that they do. My wife is a hero. She's an advocate for youth, and anytime you talk to her, at some point, she's going to talk about the children, what she needs to do about children. She's made sacrifices for not just her children, but all of the children of our community and the children of the world. So I look for qualities in people that are heroic qualities. That's what makes the heroes, not the recognition. The recognition is something which may or may not come. But if you've got those heroic qualities, they come out. irrespective of whether someone else sees it or not.
Are we open to sacrifice today? Are there heroes among us?
There are, but it becomes more difficult today, Bill. And I say that not to disparage people today, because I think people have been people throughout the ages. But times change, and forces change. And here lately, there has been more emphasis placed on material acquisition. You know, get that big house, get that car, make and accumulate some money, look out for yourself. Then after you've done that, you got a little time left over and a little money left over, then you can do something for somebody else. But self is number one. That's sort of been the philosophy of the 80s and the 90s, and that concerns me. Of course, we all want some comforts of life, but we're not special. We are part of humanity, and we don't deserve any more of the comforts than others who don't have them. So what I look at is a society that has much more than it did in terms of development, in terms of resources. So if we have much more, then why not do much more, and why not share it with more people? But this idea of meism that we see so much of today can be a very dangerous thing. So we've got to be careful about that and make sure that we don't go too far down that road of just doing for ourselves and only incidentally doing for others. I think doing for others has to be a central part of your life. It has to be a central part of your being. It has to be a central part of what your commitment is all about and what your passion is all about. You can have passion. We talked about passion a while ago. You can have passion. You can have passion for getting all the things that I want in life. And I suppose that is a passion. But that's not the kind of passion I think about when I think about passion. I think about a passion to share, a passion to make life better for others, a passion to leave the world a better place than we found it.
How would you respond to recent graduates who've received their diplomas from institutions throughout the country last week and this weekend and next weekend, who would say, James Ferguson II, you were able to make a difference in the world because you grew up at a time when the world needed a difference and you responded to it. I'm not sure how to make a difference today. I'm not sure of that change that I want to see for the future, so I don't know how to lead us to that.
Well, I would have to say to them, open your eyes. There are no fewer causes today than there were in 1960 or in 1950 or at any time in the past. There is no less hunger today. There's no less poverty today. The world is filled with violence and war all around us. Peace was a big cause of the 60s. We can all become committed to peace, and we need to. We read the papers today and we see that our government is spying on millions of people. And that threatens the very foundation of the government that we believe in. Unless citizens speak out against that kind of thing happening, then we're going to lose those precious freedoms that we have. When we look at what happens to prisoners of war, when we look at the fact that torture is being perpetrated all around the world and even by our own country and justified by our leaders, there's a cause. There's a cause everywhere we look. When we look at AIDS all around the world, particularly in Africa, we look at sickness and we look at poverty. We look at AIDS in the United States. We look at hunger and poverty in the United States. We look at the young people who are going to prison in the United States. You look at the fact that there are more African-American males in the prison system than there are in the education, in the college system. Then there are causes that are involved in the world. Then we look at what's happening with immigration, where people who've had an opportunity to grow up in this country or to come to this country and develop for themselves, they talk about shutting that off for other people. There's a cause here. Everywhere I look, Bill, there are causes. All the young people have to do today is find the cause that suits them and it's there. There's no lack of causes.
So the work is not done.
The work is not done, far from it. And we have to do it, and young people have to do it.
Share with us, if you will, your work in South Africa. I'm fascinated that you helped to establish the first trial advocacy program there, and that similar programs you're working with in Namibia and Swaziland.
The South African experience has been one of the greatest experiences I have ever had, Bill. And it came about in ways I never would have expected. I didn't set out to go start a child advocacy program in South Africa one day. But there was a need in South Africa, and I got the call through other work I was doing here in child advocacy to come to South Africa to see if there was something I could do. And I answered that call not even knowing what I would be able to do. Ken Brown and I, Ken was dean of the law school at Chapel Hill at that time, went to South Africa together, having no idea whether the program we were taking there was going to succeed. But we saw a need, and we went. And we committed ourselves to make a difference if we could. And it turned out that the program was well received. And we worked with black lawyers who were totally marginalized in that society, who could get no real hearing in the courts, who were not respected in the courts just because of the color of their skin and because of a system of apartheid. But they were willing to make a sacrifice to make their world a better place than they found it, because they wanted to equip themselves in every way that they could to fight this brutal, ugly system of apartheid. So they worked with us, we worked with them, and we made a difference. I don't say we changed South African society, but we worked with people who did change that society, people who were committed to changing that society. And it wasn't just some grand scheme to change the system of apartheid, but looking for the place where we could make a difference. And I feel like we did. And the byproducts were as important to me as the central thing that we were doing. We were going there to equip lawyers to fight the system of apartheid and to fight it better. But Ken and I developed friendships that are among the most cherished friendships that I have in the world. And Ken chronicled those friendships in a book called Black Robes, White Justice in South Africa. I think that was the name of his book. And he talked about the amazing stories of courage of the South African lawyers who laid their lives on the line to bring about a better society in South Africa. And that society has come about. And a lot of those lawyers who had literally nothing at the time we started working with them at the height of apartheid back in 1986, who have become leaders in that government. Some of them became the Minister of Justice, justices on the South African Constitutional Court, judges all around South Africa, presidential advisors, ombudsmen, all kinds of things in terms of leadership of South African society. Many of these lawyers were able to do as a result of their commitment and their dedication and their determination to bring about a better society. They didn't look around and say, we don't have a cause. They didn't look around and say, there's nothing for us to do. They didn't look around and say, this is 1986 and the civil rights struggle took place in 1956. They looked around and said, there is a need and I have something I need to do. And that was true of lawyers who had been around for years. That was true of lawyers who were coming out of school and following their own passion, following their own commitment. They made a difference. And it wasn't just black lawyers. It was black and white lawyers who believed in justice, black and white lawyers who believed in equality, black and white lawyers who believed in a new order in South Africa, who committed themselves to do that. And by using their legal skills and training, they were able to bring about that difference. So I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to be a small part of that, so that now when I go to South Africa, and I still go every year and work with that same program every year, I can go and not even have to work if I don't want to, because the South Africans do it themselves. But I have wonderful friends and wonderful colleagues that I know and enjoy being with in South Africa. So in many ways, going back to South Africa is like going back home to me, because they made me feel at home. And I embrace South Africa as home.
It's wonderful. You know, one of the outstanding and often lauded characteristics of a UNC Asheville education is captured in the liberal arts experience. And that often is translated beyond the particular curriculum to students being well equipped to work in teams, problem solve, have a curiosity about the world, have an openness to exploring very challenging and sometimes opposing points of view, and an intense desire to work as a community to help to establish that new order that you spoke of in South Africa. To UNC Asheville students who are graduating, who are taking their place in the world, who hopefully will have and enjoy the same distinguished level of career that you have. What does James E. Ferguson II say to those young people about that experience?
I can only say to them what I say to myself and to others every day. That is that if we set our minds and hearts to making a difference, we can do that. And young people, students, and others have always been the ones to rejuvenate society and to renew society. Many of our great leaders were young people when they started. Martin Luther King was a young man, 28 when he took over as leader of the Montgomery
James
movement.
Ferguson.
My colleagues and I were in high school when we saw a need and answered a need, and we were empowered by our commitment. We were empowered by our passion to be able to do that. Jesus was a very young man when he started his ministry and made change. Buddha was young when he started. So if you look around, many of our great leaders didn't start as people who were seasoned and experienced and who had the wisdom to know exactly how things were going to be and had looked out on life and made choices about it. They were people who felt the moment and seized the moment and made a difference. And I think young people are always the ones to renew and refresh. That's what being young is all about. Young people are unrestricted by many of the life's experiences that weight down those who've been around for a while. So it's a question of believing in oneself. Margaret Mead, the noted anthropologist, made the statement, never doubt that a small group of committed people can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And I say that to young people. You can change the world. Indeed, you have to change the world. Because if you don't change the world doesn't change, and we get more of the same. And while we've made a lot of progress in breaking down some of the barriers of race and breaking down some of the barriers of poverty and illiteracy and sickness and all of the things that plague us, there is still plenty of poverty, still plenty of sickness, still plenty of disease, still plenty of hunger, still plenty of hatred and intolerance and injustice in the world, and still plenty of need for young people to get involved and make a difference. And there's no excuse. You can't say I'm too young. You can't say I don't know. If you see it and you feel it, it's time to act.
James Ferguson, Asheville native, you honor your community and you honor the University of North Carolina at Asheville by accepting an honorary degree in this graduation season for the university. Thank you so much for sharing with us some very poignant and wise moments of your life and providing for us a glimpse into the workings of a very purposeful and devoted life.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. It's an honor for me to be here, to receive this honor. And it's an honor for me to be on your program. And thank you very much.
James Ferguson is one of the nation's leading civil rights attorneys and a native son of Asheville. He graduated from the former Stevens Lee High School, where he was founding president of the Asheville Student Committee on Racial Equality, known as ASCORE, an organization dedicated to desegregation of local businesses by peaceful means. He graduated from North Carolina Central University and Columbia University Law School, returning home to North Carolina to establish, with veteran civil rights lawyer and educator Julius Chambers, the Charlotte law firm of Ferguson Stein Chambers. The firm is credited with influencing more landmark state and federal legislation in school desegregation, employment, and voting rights than any other in the United States. The firm has won benchmark Supreme Court rulings, such as the 1971 Swan versus Charlotte Mecklenburg Board of Education, which helped integrate public schools across the country. James Ferguson has dedicated his career to making life better for the next generation. To his many awards and honors, UNC Asheville is privileged to add the Honorary Doctor of Humane Letters degree.